you asked how I got to the profiler part, and I didn't know exactly which bit, just in case I didn't cover what you wanted to know. Um, yeah, I'll just show you, I thought. So I've got the project open. Oh yeah, I made a little title screen. I got jokes, right? So you obviously go up the top, you go to analysis, and then you bring up the profiler. You got the game. You switch it over to play mode, and then you actually have to play the game. And then when it runs, we get to the situation that we know is going to be an issue. And bam. So now you've got the so I've clicked that there, stepped into the next frame, which pauses it in the background. But I'm pretty sure you can unrun the game now because it will stay in the profiler. Oh fuck, I've done it wrong. Good start. Okay, switch over to play mode. You also probably want to click deep profile as well because it gives you more information, but it will lag more. It will chug the editor more, but it's more useful, just slightly more useful. Okay, so we start again. And it fires up, and it starts recording. Just let it settle out the initial things that get done at the start, and so now it's running. And yeah, because the initial big chunky frames at the start have gone, it's now filling up the whole graph, and it's running at this average of whatever it says, 10 milliseconds, which is under target. That's good. I mean, it's getting close, but it's good. Could be better though, to be honest, but and I probably want to watch. There you go, I missed it, but that's fine because we can see these spikes here. These spikes are when the problem occurs, and so we've got deep profile on, we've got that on. Okay, you know what, let's just test. Let's click turn that off, and it stays in the profiler, which is nice, so we don't need the game chugging in the background. So I also probably should have mentioned you have these different things that you can click here, and you can right click you click up here, profile and modules. You can turn off what you're using. This is all I've got on, but you can turn off, like, the only area that's important really is for this for debugging scripts is CPU usage. That's as far as I understand it. I mean, take everything that I'm saying with a pinch of salt, but CPU usage is done by the scripts. So, and then you can have these ticked as well, but I've got all of them unticked apart from scripts. I mean, you probably want garbage collection on there as well because that'll help you see when scripts are freeing up memory and stuff. But script is the important one, right? So then you look at the graph, big spike is bad, and then it'll tell you here 53 milliseconds, and we want 90 frames a second at a minimum on the VR headset because that's what the Oculus runs at. So any lower than that and it's going to be noticeable. 1,000 milliseconds divided by 90 is 11.1. So that's your budget. You've got 11.1 milliseconds per frame, and if it dips below that, if it dips below that, you won't notice it if you're a human being. But apparently, some people can notice that if it gets, and here 50 milliseconds, or this one 80, we've dipped well below that. Like, it's not taking us 11 milliseconds, it's taken us 53 just to do these scripts. So, what's 11 into 53? It's taken 5 times too long to do this frame. So you've dropped 5 frames basically. my math's probably off there, but you get what I'm trying to say. And so how do you get to the part where you see what's causing this? You look down here on the bottom half below the CPU graph. I wish I could get rid of these. You can probably get rid of these completely, but it's not important. I'd make this graph bigger just so I can just see this graph and this. So that's all we need. So down here, I'll close that again. You've got the editor loop, which won't be running in the build, I don't think. And even so, it's not important for now. And then you've got the player loop, which is the player, the client, the game. And then again, like 59.8, that says 53, but that's like that. This is like the text breakdown of everything that's happening on the frame. So that's why this says 59.8 milliseconds. That's higher than it takes to do just the scripts. Okay, and you've got calls there. That's how many times this is called per frame. So I'm not entirely sure, but it might be getting called twice because it's doing 2 render passes or 2 camera runs or something, I don't know. Or maybe it's to do with the fact that the VR has 2 eyepieces. I'm not really, 2 lenses. But that is slightly odd. But that's not important anyway. So 59 milliseconds there. Then you look, and I've got it sorted by this. So it puts the longest things to execute at the top. So I'm sorting by that. And then you just drill down through these. And so this one here is the XR based controller. So that's to do with the I can't think what X stands for, but thingy reality based controller. It's the VR headset scripts. And so this is before, like if I'd have moved this down and you'd seen this window, this is just before the fake test hit of the bat hitting the ball. So I think this is where, oh crap, put that back. I think this is where the ball is hitting the bat and the XR controller is getting turned off and on. And so if we go into this further and we keep drilling down, you can see a whole bunch of things, like the worst ones again being at the top. So we focus on that. And then you find like find action is the cause. And find actions takes like the script. When you're writing out a C# script, the script takes a string and it looks through all of the available actions, different defined button presses like left trigger, right trigger, teleport in VR, are you clicking the mouse, all that sort of thing. It takes the string that you put in, and so this is a bad thing that you don't want to be happening at runtime. You want to have that defined ahead of time. But this one's not as important as because this is related directly to the actual testing that's happening here in the editor. I'm assuming this won't be happening when the game builds, so we don't need to worry about that one. This one though, and the good thing about it as well is once you click on one of these things, so like here you can click the XR based controller and then you'd see, I thought anyway, click there, click into it, and it should keep it highlighted, but it's not doing it, which is annoying. I'd have hoped it kept it highlighted and then it would show you where that is relative on all other frames, but you can see it dips down to below. It's not even, I guess possibly because it's not even being called on these frames, it only does this here, and that's why it's highlighted there and it rises to the top. If we go over here to here again, 41 milliseconds, then we drill into these coroutines, then we look at drill into this one, check out wait for boundary predicted calculation. I mean, it's pretty small on the scale of the graph. Oh no, that one is very small, that's fine. That one's also pretty small. I mean, 2 milliseconds, it's not too bad. They do add up though. What is causing it on this frame? Oh, this isn't a bad frame, that's what I'm doing wrong. There you go, this one's 41. There you go. So what I was trying to point out was that if you click this here, and you can use these buttons here to go back and forward one frame at a time. There you go. See, this time it stays highlighted and it shows you on this frame, this function or this method in the script is being done almost instantly. 0, I mean, it is instant. Here it's not, it's 0.19 milliseconds, which is like trivial, 0.11 milliseconds. I mean, yeah, it's trivial. It's like you could probably have thousands, or let me do the math. You could have 100 copies of this script before it would become an issue, but you don't, and that's fine. That's for the best, especially because on this frame it rises up here to 32 milliseconds, or 32 and a half, and so the budget is 11.1 milliseconds. This is 3 times more than it should be. And this garbage allocation here, this column, this suggests, this is telling you that it's releasing memory from the computer. So you've cached something with, like, say, get component, and then in this frame you've released it and it's being collected by the garbage collector, or I guess it's garbage collection allocation. So in fact this is probably where you've done a get component and it said, I need to reserve this much memory. Like, this is like really dry, boring stuff now, but I mean, you asked how I work this stuff out, and this is just, and again, pinch of salt here, this is just my understanding of it, right? So there's Unity tutorials, and I could be very wrong, but this is what I understand, is that this garbage allocation thingy is an indicator of memory being allocated or freed up, and this time in milliseconds is directly telling you this took this long to execute here. So that's what those two are for. And calls is how many times is this being called. So in this case, the 9 here is saying that this has been called 9 times this frame. I think that's int pointer equality. So that's basically saying, I think, that in this coroutine, or in a coroutine, you are doing an equality check 9 times. I mean, again, this is like trivial shit. This is not important. I'm off on a tangent now. What is important is this one here. So let's draw down into this further. 32 milliseconds, pretty bad. So then you can see it's related to, yeah, and so you're sort of going back in time here as you drill into them, or not back in time, you're going through the order of execution. So we go to the stadium.checkout. I believe that's the stadium script and the checkout method or function within the script. And then you look here and you see this one's the bad one. It's saying game object set active, which in turn is having this cascade of all these things happening, and they're not insignificant individually, but they add up to be, I mean, and it says it there, activate awake recursively. Recursively being, you know, where something happens within itself. Like if you, I don't know, I can't, recursively I can't explain, like I can't think of a good metaphor for that one, but you know, where something dives within itself, like like an if statement within an if statement or whatever. That's recursiveness, and like that's what this is saying. It's saying that a game object was activated awake recursively. So that's not a script you've written, I don't think. That's a native Unity script, and it's saying when you activated this game object, which is attached to whatever game object has the stadium checkout script. I mean, it has injected, which I interpret to mean that that's set active. You've set that active, and that has therefore looked at all the objects that are its children, and because that's, you know, within Unity it has said if I have been set active, then my children that were active now have to become active as well. So, and there you go. And then apparently the biggest problem there with setting this object that has the stadium script on it is that these Text Mesh Pro, these UI elements have become active, and I can tell you why that is, because that much I do know, is that when you reactivate a user interface thingy, you know, like an on-screen GUI, it then has to like recalculate its position on the screen and its width and stuff, because sometimes like the GUIs have lots of components on them to check to see, can I fit on the screen? Am I being rendered by a camera? Do I need to nudge myself over to fit in another button to my left and that sort of thing? So like, yeah, GUI elements, you shouldn't really set them active or not active. You should use a canvas group component, and you should turn off interactable on that and turn that alpha down, and that will hide it and make it not interactable, but you can still have it sitting there. Or you could uncheck the little thingy, which is you could uncheck the little thingy on the canvas object, or you could do it on the Text Mesh Pro objects themselves. You could just uncheck the thingy, which is the same in the script as going. I don't want to say this, but get component Text Mesh Pro GUI dot enabled equals false. But again, you wouldn't want to do that. You would want to have a field in a script attached to it, which would, and it wouldn't be a game object. It would be of type Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and you would drag the Text Mesh Pro component into that, and then in the script you would write a method, and you would call that method hide, and in that method you would say button on this, or button or user interface object on this script dot enabled equals false, because then it's all set up in the editor beforehand. It doesn't have to do the get component. But yeah, sorry, I'm flogging a dead horse here, beating it. Yeah. So that's that one, and yeah, we've covered that. We've drilled down. We've seen that it's this being set active, which is the problem. Let's look at this other one, even though it's kind of, I mean, it's 8.91. We've got a budget of 11.1, so it's not trivial, but we know this is an issue because, yeah, all of these calls within calls to different methods, chaining methods, I should say. Look, there's the debug log, which you think, it's just writing a thing to the thing. It takes. Do you know what I mean if you write 10 messages at 0.83 milliseconds, that's almost a millisecond. You write 10 messages, that's almost 10 milliseconds. That's your whole budget used up. It does cache together if you write several, but not if you're writing hundreds. You will quickly eat into that budget, which is bad when you have a minimum desired FPS rate. I just want to keep looking over this. Again, so we're just following this over to here and looking at the... I guess I should be using my mouse more to point out what I'm actually looking at whilst I'm blathering, because you can't see what I'm looking at. But yeah, so that's still... Again, debug.log, that one is over a millisecond. I wonder if it's going to say how many things it's... No, because it's individual calls made on this script, this frame. Is that right? Oh no, there, 12 calls. So I guess that does tell you 12 debug lines a millisecond, which is why I wanted to get down from 300 or whatever when it was on that frame, because that caused a bit of the spike, I would say. Anyway, so yeah, we move to this one, which is the last big spike, and this here is 99 milliseconds, which is kind of crazy. And again, it's this. I just have to double check that I'm not. Yeah, this one was this one here where the XR component was activated. That was a get game object set active. This one here is this coroutine, which again, I think when we drill down, yeah, you're saying that active, which is causing a hitch. And then this one here, you're saying this active. So it could be like that when you, if you were to switch this up so that instead of setting the object active, you just have a ball in the script on the object, you know, like paused. Is this script paused? And then when you would have set the, previously you would have disabled the game object, you set active to false, but you could just set paused to true, because, you know, it's the same thing. And then in your scripts, you just, at the top of every coroutine or method, you say if paused equals true, return. And then the method and the coroutine will just immediately exit out because it knows that the game object should be paused. And you can make that method public as well, you know what I mean? So you can access it from other scripts and you're fine. And then you don't have to worry, because yeah, it being set active is like I don't know, it's hiding and enabling colliders, which is then sending a message to the physics system to say don't include this anymore, and whatever else is happening. Like, and yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything. I do want to just see, is this a bunch of, oh no, this is oh Christ, okay. So you're activating this game object, and then it's activating a child, and in that child's on enable, it's starting a coroutine, which I believe is starting other coroutines. That kind of makes sense. So, and then it's doing a serialize on a load save, save load, load save. And so, yeah, with this, you might just want to delay this from happening, because I hadn't actually seen this one before. You might just want to delay this from happening, like whilst the game's in play. Like, unless this is, because I don't know what you're serializing here or what you're loading or saving, but you know, fade to black when you decide when the replays happened, and right, the ball's been thrown at the player, or in this case the testing data, the player hits it, then you fire up this little replay visualization, and you play back the visualization of the replay in the visualizer, funnily enough. And so all that should you know what I mean, all that can happen seamlessly, and you don't need to save anything to disk in that instance of time, because the game is in play, right? So then as soon as you've, like, I don't know how quickly the player can go, I'm pleased with that, or I'm not pleased with that, I want another go, right? And then they tap behind their head in order to, with the cricket bat, in order to fire off the next ball, right? But like, when they fire off the next ball, maybe fade to black for a split second, and then bring the lights back up. And I mean, with that, you can just put a black texture over the screen and fade it in and out. But when it fully fades to black, then do this save, because then it will not be noticeable. And if you drop a frame, then the guy who's complaining about, oh, I noticed a lag spike there, he's not going to notice it, because he's looking at a black screen for one frame extra. But he might notice it if he goes up to tap behind his head, and all of a sudden this happens, where it serializes data, and suddenly it drops a frame, and he's turning his head at that moment very quickly, and that dropped frame could, like, because I'm not going to argue and say, this guy's talking crap. He very well could be very noticeable and what's the word? Disorientating, nauseating for him if it drops below, playable, and it's like VR headset, and it could be nauseating or disorienting. So make it happen when it's not possible to see it happening. Just do it, like I say, before you set up the next bowl, just fade to black, and then do it as it's in black. And yeah, I think I've gone on for longer than I wanted to, because I wanted this to be quick, and I wanted to try and be very concise explaining how the profiler works. But as always, I have talked so much shit, so if you got this far, you know, well done for persevering. Hopefully I explained the profiler, and if not, you know, just give me a message or whatever, and I'm happy to hopefully explain it much more concisely. But I thought this would be easier, because there's a little bit of clicking about, you know, you have to click this spike in the graph, and you have to have this on, and blah blah blah. So at least this way I've explained it whilst doing it, and I know I've not explained it too wrong. So anyway, I must shut up. Alright, cheers.